Welcome, welcome. I'm going to put an example in the chat here of a way you could say hello and introduce yourself. Maybe what center you're representing or organization and who you are and where you're calling in from. And if you know the indigenous territory that you're on, to add that in as well is a great way. We're just going to give people a minute or two of grace as people are rushing from breakfast or lunch or a meeting to get here, and then we're going to get started. We got the people jumping in, which is great. A few more folks. Hello, Morgan.
Hello.
Is it Evelyn? Did I say your name right? Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
I love the spelling of the way you spelled Evelyn. That was my great grandmother's name, but she spelled it with a Y.
Yeah, I meet a lot of people whose either their grandmas or their aunties
Yeah, it's a
or their
beautiful name.
mothers. Thank
Beautiful
you.
name. Glad you found your way. We're just introducing ourselves in the chat. There's a few examples in there if you wanted to do that. We're going to get started in a minute here. Just giving people a chance to find their way. All right, I think we'll get started. Oh, someone's jumping in. Let them get in here. Sean. Awesome. All right, we're going to jump into this. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're at. It's so good to be together as a RCC community and circle to connect and to be with one another about an amazing topic um, around uncovering our hidden gem. And we have Lara Kilpatrick here from Mount Madonna. Lara, we're so appreciative of you offering your time today for the community to share your knowledge and your wisdom on this topic. There's so many of us that want to learn from you. But before we get into Lara will introduce herself a little more deeply in a moment, but we're just going to take a moment to ground ourselves as a community, as a circle. So just invite you to take your hands off your keyboard, put down your pen, just feel your body in the chair that you're in. The chair is supporting you. And below, you have your feet on the ground, hopefully, and you're connected to the sacred earth. Just take a few nice deep breaths in and allow the gift of this moment, this grounding to come upon you. Connect with yourself to see how are you feeling. Open up your hands. Just let the energy of all creation move into you. Feel the breath coming in through your nose and out through your mouth. Know that there is enough goodness to go around. Just paying attention to your body. Maybe place your hand on a spot that just needs a little extra love right now. Channel the love and energy of this group to bring to that place for healing and renewal. And we come back to the circle, allowing our eyes to look around at the beautiful people who have found their way here. We're so grateful to be in this circle together, new friends and old. I didn't even introduce myself. I'm Michael. I'm the network manager from the Retreat Center collaboration. And I'll say that I'm actually feeling a bit dizzy today. So I'm not sure what's happening with me, but I feel a bit like a space cadet. So I'm going to do my best to do a good job. But I'm glad to have Peter and Pan here, both colleagues from RCC as well. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Lara, to tell us a little bit more about yourself and get us into this topic. We're so grateful for you today. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm grateful for the invitation to share the story of Mount Madonna and um, where we are right now and the work that we've been doing. Um, uh, my name is Lara, and I serve as the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer for the Hanuman Fellowship, which is the nonprofit umbrella for Mount Madonna Center in Watsonville, California, which is sort of the central northern part of California. Um, at Mount Madonna, I oversee marketing strategy, programmatic growth for us, and then also business development. Um, my career began in marketing for high tech. So back in the days of voice over internet being invented and Adobe systems creating all of their magical tools for graphic designers. Those were a couple of my clients were in making significant changes in the world. But at the end of the day, even though the work was very fulfilling, and even one of my clients became the most the most valuable corporation in the world for just a short time. At the end of the day, I didn't feel inspired personally by the impact that I was having in the world. So made a complete pivot and directed my attention to working with nonprofits in both marketing and then eventually fundraising. So now, after about nearly 25 years, been working for nonprofits in educational, environmental, child welfare advocacy, wellness sectors, building sustainable revenue streams, strengthening brand positioning, and amplifying the organizational impact. So been really enjoying this career now. From a young age, I was immersed in community and yoga. My parents were students of Baba Haridas, who was a silent yogi who came from India in the early 1970s. So I met him when I was 7 years old. And through him and through my parents being involved with Baba Haridas, we were drawn to what then went on to become the Mount Madonna Center, founded in 1978 by students of Baba Haridas. The center is, and I know I'm speaking to an audience that might know a lot about the center, but some of you perhaps do not. We're a 380 acre mountaintop property overlooking the Monterey Bay in north central California. We're a multi-generational community of practitioners of yoga, ages newborn, brand new child born earlier this year, all the way through 90 plus, people with very diverse backgrounds. We are focused on offering programs in yoga and Ayurveda, the sister sciences of health and healing that were not well known at the time. Baba Haridas, who's known as Babaji, wrote books and taught, but his following really grew by word of mouth. He did not seek self-promotion or fame or recognition. And in those early years, the center grew to include a preschool, kindergarten through 12th grade independent school, which was founded in 1979. So just a year after the center was officially founded. Some years later, in 2003, a temple was built called the Sankat Mochan Hanuman Temple, which represented a place of devotion and peace with the deity Hanuman from India, who Babaji especially resonated with. And then in the mid 2000s, we took all the work of the yoga and Ayurveda programs that we'd been offering for a number of decades and created an institute that then was accredited in 2015 by WASC. And we offered certificate programs in yoga and Ayurveda and a master's in Ayurveda. So all of that has been offered and continued over the last number of decades. just a question for everybody. I have some background noise with some birds and such. Is it distracting? Okay, good. I'd rather not wear my headset if I can avoid it. So fast forward to the 2018 and the passing of the guru Baba Haridas, the central, attractor for everybody to Mount Madonna Center, passed away in 2018. And then, as everybody also experienced, March 2020, the COVID shutdown, and then those couple years of either being completely shut down and then evolving into partial shutdown. And during that time, the next generation, the children of founders, were invited to take on leadership roles. So my best friend, Prabha Pacey, became the ED of Mount Madonna, or Hanuman Fellowship Mount Madonna, in 2021. And then she invited me in, and I joined in 2022. So, that was me returning to the place of my childhood. And I had been the first graduate of Mount Madonna School, so deeply embedded in that. My mother helped to found the school. My father was involved in building the rock walls and various aspects, helping build one of the main buildings of the center. So the whole family was deeply involved. And then in this team of next generation leaders, we had Prabha, my sister Usha, who some of you may have met a couple of weeks ago, presenting from the board, perspective on board leadership. And then we have another Mount Madonna School alum, Bright Star, on the board. And then another person that I also grew up, Mohan, who is our also on our board and served as our CFO for a number of years here just when we reopened. So, like a reunion of all of us who had grown up and taking over the reins from our founders and mentors and people who had taught us from a young age. So here we get to the crux of today's focus and the work that we've been engaged in since 2022 through to the present. And that's really been, let me just go ahead and start my slides here. Share. Right, by show of hands, can you see that? Okay, great. So here's Mount Madonna. Today's talk is about marketing communications and really sharing Mount Madonna's story in hopes that it might be helpful to others and be of resource, that the things that we engaged in, the ways that we did it might be helpful and inspiring to others, our other colleagues. So really we were called to help reunify our organization. We were looking at merging the Mount Madonna Center and Mount Madonna Institute, which had arisen in the 90s and 2000s, and bring them back together to become one cohesive organization. And then that temple that was built, really integrating the temple and the audience attending the temple, have them become more aware of everything going on the campus. So really in 2022, I was charged with helping the team reveal this hidden gem. Like I shared, Babaji didn't seek fame or to be well known, and so there was never a lot of outward promotions about the center or about his teachings. He published books, or we published books that he wrote, but there really wasn't, a big brand out there representing Mount Madonna. So we needed to reveal the hidden gem and rediscover who we were previously and who we are now, and rebuild a cohesive identity. So in that, we took on the work of writing a new mission statement, creating a new logo. So from the 70s, the logo that we had from the 70s, and creating a new one to represent ourselves today in these times, and then building a new website. And the website that we had at the time was actually, I think, only 5 or 6 years old, but built on a platform that wasn't mainstream. And so a lot of the rules around, Google rules, or Google's rules around, search engine optimization and all of that could not be integrated into this sort of archaic kind of platform. And in fact, it was getting older and older and starting to glitch out. So we were under some sense of urgency to actually create this new website. And then we also needed to create new marketing strategy rooted in mission and customer-centric, data-centric, present-day technology and approaches. So that was the call for me and the team that I had at the time. And it was pretty new to the center because we'd never really had a marketing department, there were people who absolutely did amazing work to promote Mount Madonna and the programs, but no like cohesive marketing department. So we needed to put that together as well. So I don't know about others, but for us, the words marketing and communications were perhaps perceived by some in the community as being, people couldn't identify with what they meant, or they seemed like they were too corporate, or somewhat had negative connotations. So really that was a part of the work, was to show up with the community and with our staff and volunteers and founders and really share about that really marketing communications is how we show up in the world, right? And how we connect and communicate and give meaning to the work that we do. And that rebranding, even though it sounds like that thing you poke a cow with and it's hot and puts your letter on the cow, it's not that. It's not violent like that. It's looking at who you are and how you want to show up in the world and with one another who are on the, within the organization, but then also with the people that you're trying to invite in and bring in. So really just looking at rebranding as a re-expression of who we are. And so the goals of rebranding for us were to brand, representing sort of that mental impression, that emotional connection that a customer or guest or client might have. So that gut feeling that people have toward an organization. So not just a logo or not just the words, but what do you want people to really feel when they look at your marketing materials or at your website. So the branding is a re-expression of who we are now for these times, just representing, revitalizing the look and feel of who, how we're showing up in the world. And then provide steps for how we communicate effectively and authentically, both internally, which is vitally important, as well as externally. So for us, this was a pretty large endeavor because, we are nearly 50 years old as an organization. And so we really needed to get everybody on board and everybody feel like they were engaged in a process that felt meaningful to them. And we didn't want to come up with something that we all did on the side and then came in and no one could resonate, at that gut level with. So it was just really important that we gather together, our elders and various stakeholders from across the organization. So elders and founders, new leadership, of course, representatives from the Hanuman Temple, representatives from the Institute, and of course, representatives from the center, and then people who, you know, were some of the newcomers, the next gen, but also people who had been doing the work for a long time. So there ended up being about, 16 to 20 people who were engaged on a regular basis through calls, through in-person presentations, and then a much larger swath of people engaged, including the board members, staff and resident community, and then eventually to our Hanuman Fellowship membership. So really tried to keep people engaged and feeling like they were a part of the process. And that was absolutely key to the success in the end. We hired professionals to help us to bring that sort of, you know, external, more objective view into what we were doing. So we found an agency actually out of New York called Soul Camp Creative, and they're a brand strategy and visual branding agency. And they brought strategy plus heart, and they led a 3-day in-person intensive, followed by weekly meetings with our team. So in that 3-day intensive, we brought together, you know, that 16, 18 number group of people to talk about the brand, the logo, the mission, and then launch from there. And out of that, we came up with one of our first outcomes, which was our new brand mission. And the Hanuman Fellowship had always had a mission statement, but it was more sort of really internally facing, using language that wasn't very accessible to, you know, just a lot of various audiences, especially those that didn't really know us or know yoga in depth. So we wrote together and then iterated with input this mission statement, which is, you know, main intention, holding space for personal transformation toward ultimately peace in ourselves and in the world. And through naming in the mission, naming the various aspects of who we are. So a community of practice, stewardship of sacred land, just really naming that because it's so important to us. Preservation of wisdom, so speaking to those ancient wisdom of Ayurveda and yoga. And then really our dedication to lifelong learning, that we're constantly wanting to, you know, become new and better and have practices that help us to find peace. So now we've been, you know, really living into this mission and really incorporating it into the various works of our teams, seeing how we relate to it, you know, more tangibly in our staff reviews, really paying attention to the mission as we talk about sort of our impact in the organization. So it's been, I think, quite meaningful for all of us to be able to use sort of this really succinct ways of talking about ourselves. And then the next big project, which was significant, was creating our logo. And we needed a logo that was accessible to the various audiences, that was, you know, more modern for the modern day times, was authentic and really rooted in our history, reflective of, you know, who we are and who we aim to serve, offering you know, various meanings behind it, if just only for ourselves, but perhaps for the person viewing it for the first time or for the 100th time. So initiated in June 2022 when we brought that that branding agency in. We started drafting what it might look like and various aspects of it, and then finalized it about 9 months later. This is ultimately what we've come up with and what has become our logo. The shape is called a yantra, and that is a Vedic symbol to focus the mind or channel energy or represent specific cosmic powers. In general, yantras function as like visual mantras, aiding meditation and spiritual growth and the attraction of positive energy. So for us, we chose the four gates yantra, so the four different ways to come into the space. So they are thresholds between the inner and outer worlds. And most importantly to us, they represent sort of that open invitation to the viewer in and the many different pathways that you might come to peace. So representing welcoming and belonging for all who are seekers. The circle within is again like a portal, welcoming people in, a portal to go inward, to explore self. In the circle, it also represents community, represents the sun. So lots of symbology around the circle. The mountain within the circle is really speaking to Mount Madonna, which has been a sacred place for 10,000 years, back when the Ohlone peoples came and gathered there. It was never a living place for the Ohlones. It was where they would gather between the different seasons, going from the coastal area to the inland region and back and forth. So the various Ohlone peoples would meet on that land, and we have evidence of that. So really wanting to speak to that, of course. The dark and light ends up being a yin and yang kind of symbol. Some people see an EKG in there, so the signal of the heart. And then also just the mountain representing constancy and permanence and that motionlessness. And then the moon, the crescent moon of Shiva, so representing the cyclical nature of the universe, or the waxing and the waning of the moon, symbolizing the cycle through which creation evolves, birth and death, creation and destruction. The moon also has that feminine energy, whereas then potentially the sun is the masculine energy, so balancing that. And then the moon representing intuition, psyche, and empowerment. So really, spend some really in-depth time doing broad strokes and then bringing it back to this group that we gather on Zoom and get input, and then iterate, bring it back, and then finally reached a state where we were pleased with the outcome and what it represented for all of us. So I thought we could take a quick break there and break out for a couple minutes and just talk a little bit amongst ourselves around what we might be up to in terms of what other organizations might be up to in terms of this work together. If you're also engaged in finding a new logo for your organization, or iterating the one you have, or something that you're looking at potentially being involved in the near future. So Pam said she'd help out with this, and we thought we would ask you about, when were your current logos adopted? Have there been any recent updates in 1, 3, 5 years? And then do you have plans to revise or create a new one? So we thought we'd break up into groups of 3, and talk amongst yourselves for a couple of minutes each, so maybe 2 minutes each, and then come back and harvest from your conversation. Welcome back. Hope that that was meaningful. Wondering if each group could have one person from the group represent the group with sort of just a couple takeaways from your conversation.
Um, I can hop in. Um, we had like it felt like not enough time, as it never feels like
Oh
enough
no.
time. But I think like I can speak from my perspective, Lara, as just like I'm so impressed with the work y'all have done in actually quite a short amount of time. And I was sharing with my group, Lara, that when you were speaking, I went to the like Internet Archive and looked at the Wayback Machine and looked at your website from
Oh,
2005. And it is remarkable how
good.
far y'all have come in such a short time. But I would say that like what was coming up in our call was the challenge that I really felt at Hollyhock too. I didn't manage to say that in our call, but the other folks on my call were just talking about how hard it is to move through a brand like a rediscovery when our orgs are many, many decades old, and even new orgs, because it can feel so personal. It can feel so
So
personal. And so I would like in our call, well, that's kind of what we were talking about. And then it just makes me so um it's just like I think you and your team have done an amazing job.
awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Another group.
Well, in our group, I did most of the talking because we are a restarting kind of retreat center that has been around for decades, and we're kind of rebuilding after COVID. And we
Yeah.
also have kind of two branches under the Sisters of St. Francis of Philadelphia. We have an East Franciscan Spiritual Center and a West, and we really want to come up with some branding that sort of reflects how we're unified but different, and Franciscan but open, and all those things. We're just
Yeah.
at the beginning of that particular journey. And I'll say my takeaway was that Evelyn was so kind as to say that I shouldn't be overwhelmed and that I have a lot of great stuff to start out with and that it's going to be amazing.
Nice. Great. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll jump in. I also felt like I kind of monopolized our our conversation. I got to share the space with Bhavani and Sean, um, and the conversation that we ended up having. I felt so much resonance with what you shared, Laura. I just started a new leadership role at a place called Shadowcliff
Right.
in Grand Lake, Colorado, and about 6 months ago, October 15th. And it's a return for me. It was founded by my grandparents back in the 1950s, and so we're in that same space
Right.
of of a for me it's a return. I'm a child of or a grandchild of founders, right?
Love that.
And thinking about what we talked about a little bit was that kind of looking back to look forward, like how do you hold that space
Yeah.
of honoring the
Yeah.
history and legacy and the core spirit of these really beautiful spaces and the vision that it took to build these places from scratch, right, from nothing. They didn't exist before.
Yeah.
um, and while also thinking about what adaptation looks like. How do you respond to in present moment? We're not in a moment of rebranding, but we're in year 4 of a 5-year strategic plan, obviously a new leadership moment. And there are some emergent things in the past couple of years that have really, I think, opened up new portals from where we have been. And so it's not necessarily a total rebrand, but it is a sort of reimagination
Yeah.
I was sharing with Bhavani and Sean. The way that I've been thinking about it is a kind of becoming more deeply ourselves.
Totally.
Um,
Neat. Love
mhm.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Bhavani, I don't know if you wanted to add anything because you got a little bit cut off at the end.
Uh, I think I started to share. I'm an elder at Mount Madonna, actually from before we bought this property. Really, my whole adult life, I met Baba Haridas when I was 19, and I'm now in my 70s. So I started to say that for me, the wonderful work that I see Laura and the team, and there's a couple of them here, um, I resisted a bit at first because I was afraid of the values being lost uh, in even the word branding, because I didn't really understand what that meant. And I think through her expertise, and I've known Lara since she was a little girl, so I'm like a proud auntie. And through her expertise, I would say, in inviting the founders in, not on a day-to-day basis, but regularly through the process, she educated people like myself that were a little bit reticent, a little bit fearful about what this would mean. And it's an ongoing exploration, I think, but been so successful in having people. We're like fully booked now, and we couldn't really hold any more than we're holding, although there's still innovation going on. But with Lara and her team, understood that this was not a lessening of our values. It was more, how are we going to survive and
Yeah.
try to keep those values intact.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I agree that she's done a brilliant job with her team.
Thank you, Bhavani. Yeah. Thank you, Alexander, Bhavani. Just really, emphasizing that the work is, finding what the strengths are in the historic aspects, or the very, depending on, what you represent, many centuries old teachings, or 100 decades long, traditions, and then bringing them back in ways that potentially just only use new language, or only use, for us, some new colors and things like that. So thank you to that. Was there one more group? Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and continue, and then we will have opportunities to talk again, share again. All the rules around how you want to use that logo and how you don't use the logo. And then, of course, the colors that we were adopting. We came in during a time when I think there had been teal had been really popular for some time, and so teal was everywhere. Teal was on our website, and teal still shows up in a lot of our signs and stuff like that. But we wanted to find colors that potentially more reflected the land, right? We're a campus, 380 acres with just so many redwoods. So how do we bring in sort of the feel of that campus? So the color palette is based on that, on, trying to, that the colors aren't what are prominent, but that the images of people and practices, or the images of, the beautiful trees or the vistas, that the brand colors more are the background palette that allow those images to shine forth. So choosing that kind of color palette. Typography, that was quite an interesting practice. We had picked a type for our logo, and then found out that the licensing rights of it were so expensive that we licensed it just for our logo, but then chose something similar, actually a Google open font, free font, for the rest of our fonts. So just quite a fun and interesting adventure there, just in terms of choosing what kind of fonts we would like to use. Really establishing what tone of voice we want to have in our, in the various ways that we talk about ourselves, and then how we want to use our photographs. And then with that agency also went in and developed some brand elements and brand statements to just sort of be able to, use in meaningful ways to represent who we are in this new way. So just evocative of where where we are in terms of place, but also the history of the organization. So experience at the source was one of the taglines that we developed. And again, you see that sort of mountaintop, the cross section of the mountaintop that we sit on. So you can see aspects of the logo in that. So one side of the mountaintop goes inland toward central California, and then the moon and the other side going out to the ocean. And then Center for Learning Practices for Living. That was just the brainchild of that branding organization that came and spent time with us, speaking really, succinctly, extremely succinctly to the the wisdom teachings about what we want to do with them now. We want to make them real and current for these times. So that was a fun tagline for us that we're using. And then definitely not least of the tasks, we went on to build a new website. So as Peter kind of spoke to, we had one that really had become dated, and I think I said it a little bit ago, the platform that was built on was sort of a not a mainstream platform, so really wasn't meeting the needs that, or the demands of Google and Bing and all of the web searches and things like that. So we ended up choosing WordPress because of it meets a lot of the demands of today's technology. Again, needed to be rooted in our history, reflective of who we are and who we aim to serve, and then representative of the whole. And that was really one of the really intense aspects of the project, which was bringing Mount Madonna Center, which had its website, and Mount Madonna Institute had its own website. So we were operating in the world with two entirely separate websites with two entirely different logos. And then by the time I came, we were needing to cross-pollinate the calendars constantly, because how would someone who came from the public know which website to go to? So each calendar had to reference the other website in terms of, well, if you're looking for a yoga, you want to get your yoga teacher training 200. Oh, well, that's the Mount Madonna Institute. You would register here. Oh, but you want to attend a yoga retreat? Oh, no, that's Mount Madonna Center. We'd cross-reference over to the center. So there was a lot of needing to do that before we took on this website project. So the web project really represented into the world the merging of these two entirely somewhat separate organizations that to the world, to our audiences, needed to be seen as one. But it was quite an undertaking. So let me go there first. So we in the end we ended up with about 200 website pages, including all of our events. So bringing those two websites together and the various aspects of our history and the different programs that we were offering, including all of the calendar pages and blog pages. We did bring our old blog and refresh it a bit. So in the new website ended up having about 200 pages. And a part of the goal of the website needed to reflect that we were a residential, multi-generational community of practice, and with staff and residents living on the land, and then that we offer these accredited yoga and Ayurveda programs, and then we have our own Mount Madonna sponsored retreats and special events, and then we have programming that's online and in person, and then we're also a good portion of what we do is serve as a venue for other programs, thought leaders, inspirational leaders from around the world come and rent the facilities, and we support them in the work that they're doing. So that also needed to be represented on the website. So this is just a screenshot of the homepage. So again, really showing the place, and then that brand element, experience at the source. It was fun to integrate the brand colors, but then also really choose amazing photos that help represent the look and the feel and who we are, reflective, emotive for who we are and where we are. And so we launched that new website. So as I shared, we started the official meeting in June 2022. And then 2 years later, June 14th, 2024, launched the new website. By that time, fortunately, I had brought on, during all that time, I had been operating on my own as the Chief Marketing Communications Officer. And then just months before this, brought on Morgan, who's here on our call with us, as our Marketing Communications Manager. And then another consultant, Haley Dempsey, who had a lot of experience in this too. So fortunately, by the time it came time to launch this website, I had this wonderful team to help launch it. And then the statistics just 1 month later were that we had increased website users by 65%, and that visitors were staying on the new site longer, as much as, twice as long, 2.5 times as long. So it was very significant for us in that. And I think, as those of you who have done any of this work recently or in past years, you know that building a website is, given the pace of technological change today, the websites are in constant iteration, and there's huge demands by Google and Bing and other search engines that we really have to continue to meet those requirements. Otherwise, there's different red flags that happen, and then you don't come up in people's searches. So just constantly updating, ensuring that the search engine optimization work is done, and again, that's changing constantly. And then, as everyone knows, with the rise of AI, a whole other way of presenting material on the website. So now with AI, you need to have very clear structure of data on each page so that the tool, AI can find everything. You have to have clear headings. The structure of headings needs to be, extremely routine on every page, so that once the bot finds how it's done on one page, it can use those same rules for other pages. Really important to use simple, direct language for AI to be able to yield, the answer to people's questions. And then really thinking about all the different questions people might have and making sure that the answers to those questions is very easy to find. So that's, we continue to work on that. 55% of our website users are on mobile. So really continuing to work on making that mobile experience much more engaging and easy, and easy to flow through and find what people are looking for. And then ultimately here, through all of this work that we've been doing together for the last 4 years, really, there is impact and there is results, and that's what makes all the hard work, have been extremely meaningful in the process of it, but then also in the outcome. So our earned revenue since COVID has increased by 500%. Our own sponsored programs are selling out, which is wonderful. We're designing a new program for the fall. We have thousands of visitors annually coming for the programs and the temple. We have a really engaged online community with our free weekly classes. And then, of course, a vibrant residential community of our founders and elders and our staff and volunteers. So it's been wonderful to, like I said, was a great engagement and a great journey, and lovely to be able to see the results of it now, 4 years in the making. So I thought we could engage again in breakouts, talk about, thank you, Alexander. Talk about maybe if you're looking at building a new website, and if where you are in that process, so we could break into groups and talk about that again, and then or that separately, and then come back together again and talk further about sort of the state of our brand identities and what some of those challenges and opportunities are in these days, in these times. So this time I'll remember to put in the chat the prompt. So let's go ahead and break up again and talk about websites. So that was fun. Again, do we have who would like to share out some of the learnings around that, where we are with building new websites or the rebranding itself?
One thing that was interesting in the group I was in was the point that branding was there, whether it was conscious or unconscious.
Right.
And that the two other people in my group were wanting to just recognize that fact and try to connect with who they wanted to serve. And I shared that before Lara and her team came on and pre-COVID, just for an experiment, I put in yoga community or yoga retreat center, and we did not come up, in earlier years, because it just wasn't a conscious thing. It wasn't the part of the world that we all need to grapple with now. And also the ways that what she and her team have done have changed some of the even on campus practices. Like I sit on a welcome table on Saturdays, and 98% of the people, or maybe 99% of the people that come to the welcome table, who are mostly from India. We did not know that there were a couple million people in the Bay Area that were from India. And they all asked, we hear you can stay here, because it's word of mouth about the temple mostly. And they didn't know anything else about what was going on in the campus. And now our personal retreat attendance and interest has gone way, way up because of the combined effect, I think. The website coming up in the search engine and educating people that arrive on the property as well, or at the website. So it's really sort of wonderful to see.
Yeah. Thank you, Ivani. Julie, you mentioned about needing to talk about your two different centers. And so obviously I resonate with you on that, around bringing the various aspects of who we are, trying to share that through line, but also more and more we're going to not differentiate between the Institute and the center. But Bhavani speaking to the temple, we still have that audience. So we need to tell the story and integrate those audiences in a way that feels organic, and not, like trying to put two things together that don't fit.
Right. Yeah. And for us, I mean, I think I know that one of the issues is we do a lot of things we do, most of the things we do are in person. And then we do we're trying to start doing some things that are together. And then how do you know, where do you register for that thing that's together? Depending on whether you live on the East Coast or the West Coast. Like we're not really like we on a day to day, we don't really even interact that much, or our people don't really interact that much either. So yeah, it is a very interesting question. I mean, one of the things I talked about in our group was just like I don't understand. People keep coming to me and saying, we'll make a site map. And I'm like, I don't really know where to start with a site map. So like then we can work on your project. I'm like, okay. So I don't know if that's a thing you want to talk about right now, or if you want to just if somebody wants to take me aside and be like, here's what you're supposed to do. I would love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. If we can offline that, absolutely happy to anyone to talk again later about what we did. And of course, our story, it will be new now because the technology is so new now. So I think someone said, could we build a website just with AI now? And I can tell you, you can't. You can use AI to help you, but it doesn't naturally put the tools in the background side of it so that so that SEO works and AI works. So you can use it to help make the structure right, but it hasn't quite yet. Like you can't just have some non-person do it for you yet. Who knows? I could be wrong in 6 months. Probably will be wrong in 6 months. But yeah, super important. I think that for us, finding the right combination, we ended up, and I don't know if I spoke to it early on, we found a great combination of a graphic designer who could implement, the brand that we did come up with, and then a website programmer. So he could just run with everything. He's based in Guatemala. We knew him through the community, based in Guatemala. So we were so fortunate because, like I said, we had 200 pages, which in theory, that would be around these days. I think it's about $1,000 a page ish. So that would be way too much for us to pay. So it was nice that we had somewhat less expensive support for building all of that. But yeah, I think the tools now are different. But yeah, Julie, there are some great tools for building site maps and various things like that. Who else?
I just wanted, Lara, I just wanted to say something. I think, I've been listening to this and I've worked in like a number of web projects. And I think like one of the things that's so important for like that's coming through in Lara's story is they did like a lot of the brand work first before they like were like, we're gonna build a new website. People like in my experience, there's a lot like I've definitely been that guy who's like, I want the shiny new thing, but I haven't done the brand work or the values work that's required. And so I really appreciated, I said to Lara, Bhavani, your like honesty about like you're an elder and you felt resistance. But because Lara's team did the brand work, the values work that gave you, enough peace to move forward, maybe not all the peace, but enough peace to nudge forward, it made the website delivery so much easier. And then like, because when I was at Holly, so I was the CEO of Hollyhock for 7 years, and we had all the issues that Lara's talked about, we had. But I wasn't quite as skilled as Lara is about like bringing people along. I was like, just do it. And it didn't work that well because people were I think the challenge is that with retreat centers, we need to be able to like people need to be able to see themselves in what's reflected back. And if you move too fast because you're frustrated or impatient like I can be, then people all of a sudden don't see themselves in it anymore. And they're like, no, I don't have a place here, so I'm just going to be absolutely obstructionist and slow the whole thing down. And so I just am like totally speaking from my own like personal experience of trying to move web projects through large communities that exist in time and space.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think along those lines, I highly recommend hiring a consultant in branding if that's what you need to do, just because you really do need that objective. This is how it's done, coming in with this, this eye of not being deep in the weeds, right? And I think that was really key to then being able to take the work to the various stakeholders. But yeah, I think another aspect, and if I don't know if you've created web pages or websites, but the content is a bear. So having someone help support with content writing is really helpful, either in a team, in your own, in staff that you have, or someone that you trust externally. And then of course all the imagery, and we have a photo shoot at least once a year so that we can bring in new imagery, both on the website and in our marketing materials. What else did people talk about? Maybe just with a show of hands, who else is doing any of this work now or in the near future, like a new logo or a new website? Yeah, Peter's building a new website. I heard about that.
I will say, Lara, we talk about optimizing for mobile, which is kind of like our next phase here, and working on that, which is huge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Does that
Andrea,
have a whole other set of considerations, Morgan?
Oh yeah. You actually can do a whole second design. So it just shows my age, but we designed for desktop and then change that to be mobile. And so now you can actually do two completely separate designs for mobile. Well, three, because pads as well. Mm-hmm. But I think if anyone were to start this right now, you would probably want to start from the mobile view and then iterate out for desktop, just because audiences are more mobile. Definitely. Andreas, are you involved in this work here in the past or soon?
In the past. I'm curious on the mobile side. This is one curiosity I had, is just I noticed it was probably about half of our views, but it was one curiosity I had around, like, are people actually purchasing right now through mobile? Because retreats are such a luxury, high-end, like, item. And I think it's also a little bit of the generational change of making high purchases on mobile. But curious if you've explored that or noticed the experience of mobile from actually like creating a retreat purchase. I notice it's a lot of views, obviously, and exploring retreats.
Yeah, I think we have sales stats, right, Morgan? I can't think of them offhand, but yeah, a lot of them are attributed to mobile. Just with people, that's the whole entire thing, all the way through to pushing the purchase button.
Yeah.
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 Well, like I said, Morgan and I are absolutely available to anyone who has, any questions or wanting to do this in the near future. And we're definitely not done. We're already talking with our web guy about building a new website in the next 1 to 2 years, because if we don't, then we'll be left behind, with how much is changing. So those days of being able to put a website up and keep it there for 10 years are gone, sadly. So who knows what in the next year, tech is changing so exponentially that it might be a whole. I remember when I was building this one, so in 2022, this NASA engineer I was having lunch with was like, "Oh, you won't need a website. It'll all just be AI, and you just put a bunch of funky content out there, and AI will find it." And luckily he was wrong, because it matters. It matters what it looks like still. There's plenty of us who want to land on a page that looks beautiful and reads well and isn't just little excerpted stuff that AI can read, but that's something a real brain can process and engage with. So there's that dynamic constantly again, until I don't even know what generation, because hopefully my grandson won't want to see it all in little, you know, bits and bytes. I think people will always want to see something beautiful and read something beautiful. So hopefully there'll always be the need for that impactful site or that impactful, brochure or whatever it might be, in addition to the stuff that technology and AI finds.
Maybe that's another reason why these beautiful sacred places of retreat center exist, that we can keep putting out into the world websites that cause us to use our brain and our soul and our heart rather
Yeah.
than little snippets of information. It's just one more reason why we need to continue to do like this hard work that we're doing of creating these spaces that challenge us to reconnect to one another and to the sacred earth and all of that goodness. Laura, I just want to say thank you so much for being with us today. I know it's a huge task to put together a presentation and you're volunteering your time, and we're just so grateful to have learned from you and to be challenged to look at our branding and our marketing and our websites in a new way. I hope no one's feeling overwhelmed. It's a fun, they can be fun projects. Although I did say to Peter, I don't want to help with the RCC website. But anyways, he's got it well in hand and something good will come eventually. I want to let you know that our next call is coming up next Friday, May the 1st. I can't believe May is upon us. It's also actually going to be about marketing. We have Amir Jafari from Retreat Finder coming, and he's going to actually talk about an analysis of what is actually driving sales and what didn't in 2025. So I'm really excited to hear what he is going to offer at that community roundtable. And if you haven't signed up to be a member, you're very welcome to do so. I'm happy to chat with anybody about membership. And there's also individual memberships available if you're not a part of an organization. So, and don't let funding be a barrier. We do have someone that's generously offered to support people to get memberships. So lots and lots of goodness. And I'll just say that the fall retreat dates are set in stone, October 6th to 9th at Lindenwood. Hi, Dion. We're so excited to come there. So sign up. It's going to be so much fun. I hope you have a great day. Good luck with whatever you're doing.